I woke up one morning to the strangest kind of silence. No cows mooing in the distance, no horses stamping their hooves over the gravel road, not even a dog barking at the coyotes out by the hills. Just pure, eerie silence, the kind that makes your spine tingle and your brain wonder what's wrong, but you're not sure exactly what yet. Something had gone terribly wrong, and it didn't even bother to warn me first. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee cup in hand, ready to tackle the usual chaos of morning chores. You know, the sound of the tractor humming, maybe some chickens clucking, just the noise of a ranch. But instead, there was a county truck parked right beside my gate, its rusty metal frame almost blending into the dry, dusty landscape. And stuck to the gate, like a bad joke, was a plastic-wrapped notice, duct taped to the steel. I squinted at it, still half asleep, and then I started laughing. I mean, I couldn't help it. It was so absurd. I took a sip of coffee, almost choking on it as I read. Notice of temporary wildlife zoning enforcement. My ranch. My property. Now officially a wildlife zone. And no, it wasn't the county or the state. Oh no, this came from the HOA. You know, Patricia Hollowell and her team of city folk who moved in next door 3 years ago, fresh off their overpriced Zen Dream VY loss. I can't say I didn't see this coming. Patricia, with her yoga pants, kale smoothies, and that whole nature is pure YB, had been circling my place like a hawk ever since they broke ground on her precious little development. First, it was the barn I built. It was too visually disruptive for their morning meditation. Then it was the smell of my cattle interfering with the herbal purity of their retreat breathing. I'll never forget the noise complaints when my tractor backfired. She even tried a petition when I refused to let them rent my pasture for their goat yoga. But this zoning declaration? It was her masterpiece. Apparently, there were endangered species nesting along my property line. Imaginary endangered birds that no one had seen. But that didn't matter to Patricia. She wanted everything around her to look like a Pinterest board of perfect serenity. And now, she had managed to get the county to declare my land a protected wildlife zone. I didn't even need to read the fine print to know who was behind it. I knew it was her. I had 30 days to contest the zoning claim. 30 days to prove that there were no rare birds, no at-risk salamanders, no ghosts wandering my fields. All I had to do was smile. If they wanted wildlife, well, I had a plan. I made a call that afternoon to an old buddy up north. He runs a wildlife rehab center and owed me a favor from the time I helped him round up a bunch of runaway elk off the freeway. I could practically hear the grin on his face when I told him what I needed. "You want to borrow wolves?" he said, half laughing. "For what? Tourism." I acted innocent. Environmental enhancement, I replied. Less than 72 hours later, a reinforced livestock trailer pulled up to my gate. Inside were 2 young wolves, radio-tagged and ready to go. Non-aggressive, they told me. Prepped for wilderness reintegration. I wasn't sure if they liked eucalyptus trees, but I figured that was a minor detail. I named them Karma and Justice. It seemed fitting. While the HOA prepared for their big, peaceful Earth Yoga Trail launch, I set to work. I cleared a wide path along the border of my property, putting up signs that read, "Conservation Area. Please respect wildlife." Technically, I wasn't lying. I had the legal right to protect the so-called wildlife they insisted lived on my land. I even planted a few native shrubs just to make it look official. Over the next few nights, Karma and Justice settled in, and I could hear their howls echoing through the hills, soft at first, but then louder. And let me tell you, that howl made the HOA residents lock up their pets tighter than Fort Knox. The first real incident came during one of their Saturday morning yoga sessions. Patricia had invited some influencer to live stream the class for her wellness brand, all peaceful incense and serene stretches. Everything was going according to plan until Karma, with impeccable timing, let out a low, guttural howl from the tree line, not 20 feet away. A scream. Then another. Someone shouted, "It's a bear." People scrambled. Mats flew in all directions. One poodle broke free and disappeared into the brush like a furry missile. The live stream? Cut short. The scene? Chaos. Patricia tried to regain control. She spun the story, calling it a coyote, trying to spin the whole thing into a peaceful wildlife encounter. But I could see through it. She knew, deep down, that her perfect little bubble had just popped. Later that week, at the HOA meeting, I kept quiet. I sat in the back with my coffee, pretending to mind my own business. But then I raised my hand, and in my best casual voice, I said, maybe the HOA should issue some safety guidelines. You know, to protect the wolves you all said were endangered. Patricia blinked. She had no idea how to respond. Finally, through clenched teeth, she managed a smile and nodded. Of course, she said. We absolutely support safe coexistence with our native creatures. I almost clapped. Back at the ranch, the news was spreading. Local wildlife officials were getting involved, but since everything was legal and documented, they couldn't do much. Some even called it an environmental win. Meanwhile, Patricia's yoga classes were being canceled. Development tours were being pulled, and people were starting to lock up their pets tighter than ever. It was almost too good to be true. But Patricia wasn't finished. I could see it in her eyes when we crossed paths near the property line. She stopped, took a deep breath like she was about to absorb some cosmic forgiveness, and then said, "We'll adjust. Nature is sacred, but if your wolves harm anyone, it's on you." I tipped my hat and smiled. Well, good thing you said they belong here. Otherwise, I'd be liable for introducing invasive species. Her left eye twitched. She didn't know how to reply to that, so she just walked off, fuming in her sandals. It was like watching a magic trick in reverse. She had locked herself in the box, and I held the key. Soon, my ranch was trending. Locals started booking nature tours. One reporter even called it an unexpected oasis of ecological harmony amidst suburban sprawl. I wasn't even trying at this point. I was just sitting back and watching it all unfold. But things started to get weird. The HOA had gone full-on panic mode, erecting signs warning of predators along their walking paths. Residents were walking around in shiny metallic vests, looking like they were about to take part in a bad sci-fi movie. I was sipping sweet tea behind my fence, enjoying the view. They had demanded wilderness, but they didn't know how to handle it when it showed up in the form of wolves. Patricia, though, she was still plotting. She thought she could counterattack with a photo op for a magazine. A peaceful sunrise yoga session with a few hand-picked residents, soft music playing in the background, her standing there, proud as could be. But Karma had other plans. She appeared at the edge of the clearing, just fly-sible enough to send the whole thing into chaos. Another scream. Another fall. A dog barked. It was beautiful. The article was pulled the next day, citing safety concerns. And then came the best part. My ranch became a symbol of resistance, of nature reclaiming space. The local community was starting to change. People were quietly rooting for me, and I was doing interviews, speaking at town forums about land stewardship. Everything was falling into place. Patricia, though, didn't back down. She filed a lawsuit, accusing me of introducing non-native predators into the neighborhood. The audacity. But I was ready. My lawyer and I had been preparing for this day. She was about to find out just how far I was willing to go. She thought she was controlling the narrative, but she was digging her own grave with every word. Her campaign was collapsing under the weight of its own hypocrisy. The more she tried to push back, the more the truth of her actions came to light. The press loved the drama, and when I partnered with an ecotourism company, things took a turn. They offered to buy a small parcel of land near my border to create a viewing platform. Perfect, right? I smiled and agreed, with full creative control. That was the nail in her coffin. The press release hit, and just like that, Patricia's carefully curated world crumbled. She was frozen in place during a live interview, unable to smile, scream, or do anything except stand there, realizing every word she had said had just been used to promote my success. The board was in damage control mode. They couldn't keep up with the chaos. Eventually, they relented. I won. The wolves had become symbols of freedom, of balance. The ranch was no longer just my land, it was a monument to what happens when you respect nature instead of trying to control it. So what's your take on this? Do you think the HOA got what they deserved, or did I take it too far? Drop a comment below. What's the line between nature preservation and personal property rights? Let's talk about it.